Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we are going to talk about what is an adventurer. Very good question, and what Dungeons and Dragons answer says for our society, specifically for America. All right, let's jump into this. So, I was watching Grace Randolph, and she did a no spoilers breakdown of The Acolyte, and I was really excited. I hadn't seen The Acolyte yet. She did She did a coverage of the first episode. She did a review of the first episode, a non-spoiler review of the first 4 episodes of The Acolyte. And she explained that The Acolyte is exactly like Radiant Citadel for Dungeons and Dragons. Radiant Citadel was the highest diversity attribute project that Dungeons and Dragons ever had. Had people of color as the primary creators, people of color as the primary designers, people of color as the primary artists, people of color as the primary writers, right? It was a diversity project, right? And Grace explained that this was very much the case with The Acolyte, that this is Star Wars times diversity, right? Like people of color as the main showrunners, people of color as the main writers, people of color as the main portraying the main characters. This is, you know, Star Wars with strong diversity, right? And then what was interesting was, so this diverse team comes and they start talking about Star Wars, right? And Grace said something brilliant. And the reason why I watch Grace is she has better language than me. She has amazing language. And she said, in this, the Jedi are social workers who can fight. And the minute I heard that, I was like, wait, what? You were like, wait a second. Oh my gosh, that's literally everything wrong with America explained in a phrase, not even a sentence, a single phrase, right? So we have social workers. Who cares? They can't fight. They can't do nothing. They don't help anybody, right? Like, we have a ton of social workers. I know social workers personally, right? Absolutely none of them are considered effective or powerful or useful in America. Maybe there are in other countries, but not here, right? And the reason why is generally there's a huge amount of obstacles to them giving anyone. There's a really large amount of obstacles. The help is there that people need. The money is there that people need, but getting it to reach getting that money to reach the people who need the aid is virtually impossible. It just doesn't happen, right? And so everything that's needed that's there to help people is there, but the obstacles are too high. And generally the social workers cannot do anything about it. They try, they really, everybody loves social workers' intent. They just don't like their effectiveness. They just don't have any effectiveness. They don't have any ability to help people. And so when an obstacle comes up, they can't fight. They don't have any tools. They don't have any weapons. They literally cannot fight, which is really, really fascinating, right? And the reason why is we do have people in America who fight. We have people who are equipped to fight, and that is our police officers. But recently in American history, there's been a huge change in how American police are perceived, right? Now, I'm not saying whether this is true or not. I'm just saying that right now in America, police would go into any local restaurant. They wouldn't even pay, right? Like everybody was like, hey, it's so good to have you here. You're a hero. We love you. You know, those days are gone in America, right? And actually, it's really sad. There's just been a shift change. And I'm not saying that the police have changed in any way. I'm not saying this is true. I'm simply discussing the perception, right? And increasingly the perception is that very much the perception is that that police can fight, but they won't help. And so many Americans are extremely hesitant. Something bad goes wrong, you're like, well, I could call the police, but what are the odds that the police are going to help me? They're going to arrive here, right? They're going to look at the situation. They're going to arrest somebody. Are they going to arrest the person that harmed me? Or are they going to arrest me, right? Are they going to arrest anybody? Is there going to be a situation where when the police arrive here, there were 4 people, and when the police go, there's 3 people? Right? It's a it's a very significant, and so that's the issue is right now in America, we have helpers who can't fight and we have fighters who can't help, right? The second part, I'm not positive if that's true or not. I've had really good interactions with police, but I, like many other Americans, recently did suffer a significant loss. And when the police, interacted, it was a big question mark when it was done. And I ended up fixing a lot of the problem. It was, and it was an incredibly difficult lift to fix the problem, right? And it's challenging. It's really challenging, right? So with Americans in this situation where we have helpers who can't fight, fighters who can't help, right? May or may not be true depending on where you're at, where, who's in your specific district, right? It really gets kind of strange. Where the rubber meets the road with Dungeons and Dragons, though, this gets really interesting, right? We ask, what are adventurers? And adventurers are helpers who can fight, right? Dungeons and Dragons says, hey, okay, listen, you make a hero. It says it right out, says this Dungeons and Dragons is about making heroes, right? And so what are heroes? That's anybody in the good alignment, anybody in the neutral alignment, right? And Dungeons and Dragons does provision you to play evil heroes, but it's like, hey, that's a weird edge case that you better talk to your dungeon master about. If you're doing that, you're not doing what we really built this for. We built this to run heroes. And what are adventurers? Adventurers are heroes. What are heroes? They're helpers who can fight. And I think that's where we need to arrive as Americans. We need to be very confident that when we call our fighters, right, our police officers, they're actually going to help. Or that when we go to our helpers, these social workers, that they have some ability to fight, right? And so that's the issue, right? And what Grace is saying is she's like, the Jedi in this are like, they show up and they're like, hey, do you have food? Do you have water? Oh, no, the answer is no, you don't? Well, the person who stopped you from having those things, I'm going to go chop their head off with this lightsaber. That's an adventurer, right? That's a helper. That's a hero. That's an adventurer. That's a hero, right? That's a fighter who can help. That's a helper who can fight, right? And I think, and what's interesting, and really, this is the second 50 years of Dungeons & Dragons. What was the first 50 years? You and your sad sack dungeon master cutting goblins in half and eating beer and drinking beer and eating pretzels. Those days are done, right? Now, Dungeons & Dragons raises questions and points us to exactly what we need. What does America need? It needs helpers who can fight, fighters who actually help, right? And maybe that should be one person. Maybe we don't need any more social workers or any more police. Maybe we need Jedi. We're we need one group that can do both. We need fighters who can help and helpers who can fight. Now, I do want to say before I wrap this up, I think police officers work extremely hard. I think they want to help, right? But again, our system is structured, right, so that many people don't know if the police are going to help when they arrive. A lot of people are like, well, they might fill out a form and then go away, and maybe that's the best that would happen. They might show up, and not all the people who were standing are still standing when the thing was done, right? That's a legitimate fear for a lot of Americans. That's not a fear for me. I'm very fortunate, I've never had that much of a fear of dealing with police. So it's a tough situation, but I think Dungeons & Dragons is pointing right to adventurers, and they're saying adventurers are heroes, and heroes are fighters who can help, helpers who can fight. I think that's what we need in America. So Dungeons & Dragons, again, right, points to the future, points to wisdom, points to the truth. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.